I stood at the door, watching the furious Nikki under the torrential rain. Her red hair was tangled and clinging to her face and skin. Despite the noise of the downpour, I could make out what she was shouting. It turned out my wife, BETH, had been involved with Nikki's husband. Nikki wanted me to stop it. Some time ago, BETH had surprised me with a call while I was away on a work trip. The rain was pattering against my hotel window when she dropped the bombshell. She wanted a divorce. She said we had been apart for too long. The thing was, I had only been away for a couple of weeks, and we had barely spent 5 months together since I returned from the army. I had no idea there were any problems between us. She never mentioned anything. It turned out she had been seeing this man for at least 3 months, maybe longer, while I was away for work. I had discovered it about a week before Nikki appeared, yet I still had no solid proof. I had tried to come up with a plan. BETH had agreed to go to therapy before I found out about the affair, but she stopped going after just 2 sessions. I assumed she wanted the counselor to convince me to stay, making it seem like she was trying. To her, appearances mattered, especially in front of her parents. So she kept up the act while seeing this man and living off my money until she made sure she came out looking good and he was ready to leave his family. BETH and I had twin daughters, Ain and Ami, who were only 2 years old. Often, she would leave them with me when I returned home from work to go to the gym or for a run to stay in shape. But it turned out that, after working out, she would sneak off to meet her lover. I was beyond angry. Every time I tried to talk to her, she would get defensive and blame me, even though she was the one at fault. She complained about looking after the girls while I worked, accusing me of using them against her, which wasn't true. Despite working full-time, I spent more time with them. Navigating the divorce process with lawyers was daunting. Infidelity didn't hold much weight in our state, it had no significant consequences. BETH seemed well aware that the courts typically favored granting custody and financial support to the wife, regardless of her actions. Alimony for several years was common, especially with young children involved, so the ex-wife could stay home and be a good mother rather than rushing into work. And there she was, a tall, awkward figure with wild red hair, a beak-like nose, and thin, angry lips. She had gained some weight after having a 6-month-old baby, which didn't suit her slender frame. The rain and her fury had left her skin blotchy. I couldn't speak, so I stepped aside, opened the door, and motioned for her to come in. I knew it wouldn't help if the neighbors heard her yelling at me outside. She followed, still berating me as she walked to the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. I sat and waited. Her anger turned into bitter tears, then trembling sobs, and finally, just quiet crying. Her head fell into her hands, and her hair became a damp, dark copper pile. I waited a little longer until her sniffles subsided. "Are you done?" I asked quietly. She looked up at me with anger in her reddened eyes, sniffled twice, but said nothing. "So," I continued, "if I could fix this, I would. I hate it as much as you do." I went on to explain how the law worked and how it disadvantaged me. "You want me to confront her without losing my temper? That could end with me in jail and on the street. Not a great plan." We sat in heavy silence until I stood up to make her some tea. The rain outside seeped into my bones, and I couldn't help but glance at her. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but there was something about her that caught my attention. When the warm tea spread through her, she shivered. "Wow, I didn't realize how cold I was," she murmured, suddenly noticing her chest and muttering a quiet curse as she wrapped her arms around herself. I sighed. Oddly, it was the most excitement I'd felt in months. "Do you need a sweater?" "One of my wife's," I offered, looking for one she could wear. She quickly put it on, almost like a striptease as she removed her wet shirt and bra to pull it over her head. I picked up her soaked clothes and tossed them into the dryer, trying not to make it obvious that I was watching her. I handed her a towel. "Dry your hair." Grateful, she began to dry her hair, and I couldn't help but notice how her movements outlined her figure through the sweater. It felt strange to feel attracted to someone in such a moment, but I allowed myself one glance. Once her hair was somewhat dry, she stopped and muttered, "I hate them." "Me too," I admitted, feeling a shared pain between us. "I can't compete with her. She's fit, she's impressive. I've gained weight since having my son," she confessed. She wasn't overweight, just a little out of shape, like me. But Beth was fit because she had the luxury of time. "You're beautiful in your own way," I found myself saying, surprising even myself with a touch of optimism. "So what do we do now?" she asked, lost. "I'm at a loss. Every time I think I'm making progress, I end up back at square one, ruined and fighting to see my kids," I shared, opening up about my struggles. What followed was an odd turn of events, but somewhere in the middle of it, we started planning how we could turn the situation around. What if you had proof she was cheating, she reflected. It wouldn't matter in court, but it could give us an advantage in other ways, I considered out loud. She sighed. "I just want them to pay." For the first time, I felt a spark of alliance. "Let me think. There has to be a way to turn this around," I said, feeling an unexpected sense of camaraderie in our shared misery. "Everyone makes mistakes from time to time. We just need to catch them in the act," I said, piecing it together. The new, expensive shoes in Beth's closet hadn't bought themselves. There was money moving secretly, Beth's expenses didn't add up. Nikki's eyes lit up with a spark of determination. "We could do this, right?" I said with a hopeful smile. "Piece of cake." "Let's get the kids settled and do some detective work," Nikki said aloud, her mind already racing ahead. "The kids don't need to come with us. My sister Angie is taking care of Hammy, she can watch them," she suggested. "Where are your kids now?" I asked. "Upstairs, sleeping," I responded. She looked around, her gaze landing on the front door before coming back to me. "Do you have sweatpants?" "I'm soaked," she said. I went to find some sweatpants while she removed her shoes. I motioned toward the bathroom, but she turned around, slipping out of her wet jeans and underwear in one swift movement, taking her time drying off, leaving an unspoken invitation hanging in the air. It felt risky for her, balancing between vulnerability and potential rejection. After all, being turned down by someone equally wronged, who hadn't been close to anyone in a long time, would have been too much. A wave of frustration washed over me, not directed at her but at my wife for putting me in such a precarious situation. Nikki's voice trembled as she confessed, "I can't believe Justin did this to me." I stepped closer, touching her thigh lightly, feeling her shiver beneath my hand. Her breathing quickened, but she didn't pull away. My touch seemed to be both a question and an answer. "I may not like you much, but I despise him," she said finally, pushing me back with a mix of confusion and defiance. In response, I casually shrugged off my sweater, letting it drop to the floor, leaving an unspoken invitation between us. Nikki watched me, the chill of the rain still lingering on her skin as my hands warmed her. I kissed her neck softly, a delicate touch that seemed to send a shiver through her body. She released a quiet sigh, her resistance melting away. Without further hesitation, driven by a mix of desire and uncertainty about the future, I lifted her onto the dining table, a bold move propelled by the intensity of the moment and the unpredictable nature of our desires. Later, as the adrenaline faded, she looked at me with a complex smile, a mix of satisfaction and newfound connection. In the silence that followed, I gathered her clothes and tossed them into the dryer. There we were, sharing an unexpected moment of intimacy, sitting at the table wrapped in towels, cups of now cold tea between us. Her gaze was heavy, her red curls tangled as she looked at me with a blend of emotions. "You knew this would happen, didn't you? From the moment you let me in," she said, laughing unexpectedly, innocent yet layered with something deeper. Honestly, I didn't think about it until you took off your jeans, I admitted, seeing the mischievous glint in her eyes. The tension eased, if only for a moment. I was afraid you'd say no, she said. I couldn't help but smile, a genuine smile for the first time in a while. How could I, especially after hearing how Justin's been neglecting you? It's unbelievable. She leaned forward, a serious look in her eyes. And BETH? How can she ignore what you just shared with me? You're worlds apart from Justin. I sighed, the weight of the situation settling. BETH has felt distant, caught up in her own struggles since the twins were born. It's like we've been on separate paths. She's more of a mother than a partner now. The air between us was thick with frustration and the shared feeling of betrayal. I still don't like you, she said, half smiling. Damn which, I replied, our words harsh but without real venom. We were allies in our misery, not enemies. If we're going to make a stand, let's see if your sister can watch the kids tomorrow. We need to clear things up, both literally and figuratively. This room is a bit too telling about what just happened, I said, half joking about the need for an air freshener to hide the evidence of our shared rebellion. As she dressed hurriedly and left, the silence of the house wrapped around me. I busied myself cleaning, making sure to erase every trace of our encounter. The towels and clothes tumbled together in the washer. BETH came home later that night, unusually calm. The heated arguments and cycle of denial and lies that colored our nightly conversations were absent. Her confusion was palpable, a stark contrast to the usual tension. It's curious how a moment of passion can smooth the sharp edges of resentment. The pristine state of the kitchen didn't go unnoticed either. She commented on how effective the air freshener was, but her words barely registered. The next morning, I skipped our usual awkward goodbye kiss. Without looking back, I left for work, a clear sign that I was done wallowing in misery. At work, I secured a friend's car for the next few months. Meanwhile, Nikki's sister, who bore an uncanny resemblance to her, agreed to watch the kids. Nikki and I set out with purpose, determined to investigate her cousin's construction company trailer for any signs of wrongdoing. As we got into the car, Nikki winced. I'm sore, it's been ages since I've been with anyone, and let's just say you weren't exactly gentle. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at her comment. Gentleness wasn't exactly the vibe, I replied, noticing a fleeting smile that broke through her attempt at seriousness. For the first time since we met, Nikki had put on some makeup, though a bit unevenly. It was a small but telling effort to reclaim a sense of normalcy amid the chaos. In an unexpected turn, I veered off our original path and headed to the mall. Our conversation was awkward, peppered with long silences and brief exchanges that fizzled out as quickly as they started. It wasn't until we reached the bustling parking lot that she voiced her confusion. Are they here? No, but if we want to hit them where it hurts, we need to lay some groundwork, I said, leading her to an unexpected destination, the makeup counter at Massey's. Her eyes narrowed with a mix of distrust and defiance. Think of it as creating a new persona, I suggested. Over the next hour, 2 makeup artists transformed Nikki, teaching her their craft. The result was a Nikki who radiated raw and undeniable allure. She wasn't just pretty, she was captivating in a way that demanded attention. This is perfect, I said. Sure, it's money I could have spent on groceries, but I'll manage. A small sacrifice for a bigger goal, I rationalized. As we left, Nikki clung to her newfound treasures as if they were priceless. She remained skeptical. What's the grand plan here? Make them pay by exploiting their weaknesses. Justin has lost interest in what he thinks he already knows, and BETH will turn green with envy when she sees you. Keep the makeup a secret at home. Use it as our little weapon when we go out, I elaborated, laying out the entire strategy. Nikki fell silent, processing the plan. It's complicated and long-term, she finally said, doubt in her tone. I shrugged, a half-smile on my face. Do you have a better idea? Her faint smile returned. "No, not really," she whispered, making a request, her voice laced with mischief, asking if she could use my house as a safe space to remove the makeup before confronting Justin. Moments later, she emerged from the bathroom, the playful glint in her eyes amplified by her bold smile. She still had the makeup on but wore nothing else. Her intentions were clear, challenging the caution she had earlier advised. "I thought we agreed not to expect anything," I said. "It would be a waste for this makeup to go unnoticed," she joked, letting the towel fall effortlessly to the floor. Later, we headed to her sister's house, where Nikki enlisted her as part of our plan. It was evident her sister had no love for Justin, making her a perfect ally in our growing plot. In the following months, we embarked on a journey of self-improvement. I used my lunch breaks to work out, while Nikki put in her efforts at home. Together, we transformed my basement into our personal gym, shedding the past and strengthening our bodies. Both of us emerged leaner and more formidable, unnoticed by our spouses, as our changing physiques were hidden beneath loose clothing. Our intimacy thrived in the shadows of our spouses' indifference, with passions that flared more frequently than I had ever experienced with BETH. Bound by a shared purpose to break free from the mundane, we turned my basement into an improvised dance studio. Embarking on a journey for which neither of us was prepared, we followed countless YouTube tutorials. Our once empty evenings and weekends now pulsed with the rhythm of dance. We started with the basics, gradually mastering more complex moves. Salsa became our favorite, a dance we reserved for the climax of our routine, a symbol of our shared joy and rebellion. I quickly realized that my alliance with Nikki was like dancing on the edge of a volcano. Her temperament was unpredictable, reminding me of a storm on the verge of breaking. The chaos stemming from her entanglement with BETH and Justin had fractured something vital within her, perhaps a barrier of rationality, leaving her teetering on the brink. I was always on alert, aware that her moments of calm were rare, found only in the embrace of passion or the innocent company of our children. Her fierce love for them was the only constant in her whirlwind of emotions. Our exchanged insults, bastard, and witch, became twisted terms of endearment, symbols of our shared struggle rather than true insults. Yet, beneath the surface of our strange connection lay a mission demanding the utmost caution and ingenuity. Nikki skillfully orchestrated daytime surveillance of her cousin's construction company trailer, capturing the scene on her mobile phone. The cousin's lack of security and alarm was our golden opportunity. We infiltrated the site multiple times, meticulously documenting every piece of hidden information. The trove of documents we found in Justin's desk and BETH's purse was particularly revealing. The dynamic with our spouses shifted significantly. BETH seemed unsteady, deprived of the fuel for our arguments, perhaps craving conflict as a means of absolving her own guilt. I, however, had no interest in indulging her, worn out from my daytime escapades with Nikki. I realized BETH might have been clinging to those disputes to rationalize her actions. Her confusion grew with each passing day. Justin, on the other hand, appeared to believe that Nikki had simply resigned herself to defeat. Amid this web of deception and discovery, I caught a break, a $2,000 refund for a deposit on a romantic beach vacation in Mexico, a trip that was no longer in the plans. This unexpected return provided a financial cushion that would surely come in handy in the days to come, especially as BETH found more excuses to spend her nights with Justin. Nikki and I sought refuge and freedom in the rhythm of dance at a local club, testing out the moves we had perfected in secret. The dance floor offered a fleeting escape, but Nikki's volatility loomed over us like a shadow. Her mood swung unpredictably, shifting from euphoria to an almost violent intensity at the slightest provocation. One night, the tension threatened to unravel all the restraint I'd practiced. By then, Nikki's transformation was undeniable. Her allure, magnified by our shared fitness regimen and intimate moments, inevitably drew attention. Her magnetic presence captured the eyes of everyone in the room. Nikki thrived under the public's gaze but managed her attention with loyalty toward those she felt had been abandoned, consciously moderating her interactions with other men. But boundaries are often ignored under the dim lights of a club. That night, while she danced with a cheerful blonde, an unwanted advance escalated despite her clear refusal. In an instant, I pulled Nikki when her nails grazed the man's face, barely missing his eye but leaving a vivid mark that would remind him of her ferocity. The scene threatened to spiral out of control. Nikki shifted the moment unexpectedly, stepping toward me with frustration that turned into a provocative challenge. "Bastard, that hurt," she whispered before her tone changed to playful seduction. "But you know exactly how to get to me, don't you?" Her gaze flicked to the blonde beside me, giving a mischievous wink. "Sweetheart, you can do much better than him. You deserve someone who isn't an idiot," she added. The incident, charged with tension and unexpected turns, underscored the complex dance of our relationship where danger and desire intertwined, keeping us on edge. The tension crackled as we stepped briskly onto the street, instinctively quickening our pace as three men in security shirts advanced toward us. The parking lot, a maze of cars, was eerily devoid of people. That's when we saw him, the man with the scratches, flanked by two friends, approaching with determined strides. Nikki's response was a mix of defiance and dark amusement as she taunted them with a sharp, challenging smile. "So formal, introducing yourselves like this. And what's the plan? For your friend here to play hero while you try to put your hands on me?" She paused, feigning fear and drawing him in. But when he reached out, mistaking her pause for submission, I saw a wild glint in Nikki's eyes, a look I knew too well, a prelude to chaos. Just as the largest of the three men loomed behind me, my instincts kicked in, ready for confrontation. Nikki's reaction was swift and visceral. She didn't just use her hands, she attacked with her teeth, biting into the man's flesh with a ferocity that elicited a scream of agony. I turned to face my own opponent, adrenaline coursing through me. My experience wasn't from an MMA cage, but the streets had been my proving ground. Yet it was Nikki's unbridled spirit that captivated my attention. I intervened just as she was about to strike again, pulling her back with all my strength. "Nikki, stop," I commanded. Her intense gaze met mine, wild and untamed, and then, as if the storm inside her had passed, she relaxed her fierce smile and withdrew from the fight. I noticed two onlookers at a distance, a petite blonde and a dark-haired goth girl, watching with expressions of shock and disbelief, frozen witnesses to the unexpected turn of events. Nikki's eyes shifted to the stunned blonde, approaching her with a purpose I couldn't understand. My instincts screamed to pull Nikki away, to leave before the night spiraled further out of control. But confronting her now would only fan the flames of her unpredictable temper. As she loomed over the immobilized blonde, my warning was a futile attempt to contain her. "Nikki, come on, she's not part of this," I said. Nikki's response was a smile full of secrets. "Oh, I know," she murmured before kissing the blonde, who responded with unexpected passion. When they pulled apart, the blonde's gaze stayed locked on Nikki, completely entranced. "Trust me, you deserve better than him," Nikki whispered, her voice a mix of reassurance and vindication. Our escape to the car was swift, the distant wail of an ambulance piercing the night. The fear that our actions had been noticed gnawed at me as I drove in silence. Once parked, the urgency of our flight gave way to Nikki's desires, turning the car into our refuge until she was satisfied. In the aftermath, Nikki's vulnerability emerged. "I really messed up, didn't I?" she asked, her question hanging between us. "We all have our moments, but yes, that was intense," I said. The satisfaction in her voice when she spoke of the violence was unsettling. "It felt so good to hurt him," she confessed, a dark revelation that left me uneasy. "It's a bit like a Hannibal Lecter vibe, Nikki, pretty unsettling," I said, trying to lighten the mood. Her brief laugh cut through the tension. "Do you think his girlfriend liked it?" she joked, trying to ease the atmosphere. Her sudden seriousness caught me off guard. "Promise me you won't let me go back to that place," she said earnestly. The fear in her eyes was raw, a stark contrast to the fierce woman who had faced danger head-on. "You were defending yourself, but you enjoyed it too much. And what if you lose control next time? Her voice broke, revealing a vulnerability that scared me more than any confrontation we had faced. Nikki was walking a tightrope, teetering on the edge of needing more than just my support, perhaps professional help, medication, or regular checkups. The aftermath of the parking lot encounter was a whirlwind. The official report described it as an altercation involving 6 men and a Hispanic woman, with a bystander named Amber at the scene. It was almost comical considering the truth of that night. "Looks like you made quite an impression on Amber," I joked, showing Nikki the documents. Her smile was nostalgic, softened by the strawberry lip gloss she wore. "So, you like girls now?" I teased. It wasn't about that. It was just a bit of fun at the club. But in that parking lot, she was drawn to me, I could see it in her eyes. "Being with you, I've stopped seeing boundaries when it comes to intimacy," she admitted. However, the chaos of that night seemed to mark a turning point for Nikki. She started to pull herself together, making slow but noticeable progress. There were moments when I could see her internal struggle, the battle to keep her darker impulses at bay, and sometimes, she succeeded. We couldn't always rely on Nikki's sister to watch the kids, so Hammy often ended up staying with us. On those nights, as we tucked them in, I found myself stealing glances at Nikki. There was a tenderness in her during those moments, a vulnerability rarely shown in the light of day. When she caught me looking, her smile was a mix of sadness and warmth, a glimpse of the woman fighting to emerge from the shadows of her turmoil. In those moments of quiet, it felt as if her demons were miles away, giving us a brief reprieve from the storm. Still, I had a persistent feeling that it was only a matter of time before things escalated. And sure enough, BETH caught me off guard one day, seeing me shirtless. Her eyes widened as she noticed the changes in my physique. She quickly dismissed her reaction, but it was a clear sign that it was time to accelerate our plans. I shared my concerns with Nikki, and our routine took an abrupt turn. Instead of our usual mix of workouts and moments of intimacy, we found ourselves armed with a borrowed car and a digital camera, following BETH and Justin from a safe distance. Nikki's diligent surveillance of their receipts and credit card statements soon paid off, revealing a pattern in their escapades. BETH played her cards carefully, but Justin, underestimating Nikki, grew careless. Justin's parents owned a modest cabin by the beach, hidden in the woods. Despite its weathered appearance, the mileage on his car indicated it was their secret retreat. Every Friday, when BETH skipped the gym, we parked off the road and crept up to the cabin, camera in hand. The lack of curtains made our task easier than expected. By the time we found a good vantage point, BETH and Justin were already intertwined on the bed, oblivious to the world outside. Before leaving discreetly, I let the air out of one of Justin's tires, a small precaution in case they decided to leave earlier than expected. We dropped the film at a photo lab known for its discretion, the kind of place that handled sensitive images without asking questions, and then returned home, the weight of what we'd just done hanging between us like a mix of apprehension and exhilaration. BETH staggered home much later than usual, her appearance a clear testament to a night that hadn't gone as planned, wrinkled clothes, hair in disarray. The next day, Nikki couldn't hide her amusement as she recounted how Justin not only had to change a tire but had also run into a nail, forcing them to make a miserable stop in the rain, miles from home. "That's karma," she laughed. In the days that followed, our conversations shifted to the future, to what each of us wanted from it. Nikki's proposition took me by surprise, but after considering it, I agreed to her plan. We waited patiently, keeping a low profile until the right moment arrived. About 3 weeks after gathering our evidence, we noticed a pattern in BETH and Justin's weekend escapades, a predictable sequence of gym visits, illicit meetings, and club outings, ending with their return home in the early hours of Sunday. This weekend, however, we had a different script in mind. With the kids safely with Nikki's sister, we embarked on our mission. Our first stop was a shopping trip where Nikki picked out an impressive dark emerald green dress that highlighted her curves. The plunging neckline and short length accentuated her features, contrasting beautifully with her fiery red hair. I opted for a sleek dark gray suit paired with a black shirt, a simple yet striking combination. Our next destination was a salon, where I encouraged the stylists to unleash their creativity on Nikki's hair and makeup. Transformed and dressed to the nines, we headed to the club, ready to set our plan into motion. Walking in, it was clear we were a force to be reckoned with. Nikki, radiating confidence and allure, ensured we didn't linger at the entrance. The doorman, recognizing the energy we carried, let us pass without a second thought. We went straight to the dance floor, setting the rhythm of the night before moving toward our true targets, BETH and Justin, seated at their usual spot, a secluded, royal, table. BETH wore a yellow dress I hadn't seen before, embodying grace and sophistication. Justin complimented her in a flawless blue suit. In contrast, Nikki was the vision of glamorous rebellion, her outfit defying traditional elegance and drawing eyes with every step. I made a show of seating Nikki with an exaggerated gesture, the stunned silence from them speaking volumes as we joined their table uninvited. My opening line was casual, a light comment about the opulence surrounding us, but it was Justin's look of disdain toward Nikki that charged the air with tension. The conversation turned icy when the topic of Nikki's dress came up. "Did you splurge on that?" The question carried an implicit blend of disdain and curiosity. My response was curt, my irritation barely contained. It was a purchase, not a splurge. A flicker crossed BETH's face, a clear sign she hadn't expected such financial carelessness. It was a moment of vulnerability, a crack in the facade that hinted at the complex emotions simmering beneath the surface. As the photographs spread out on the table, the tension in the room thickened. Justin's confident demeanor started to falter, revealing a flash of fear, while BETH's face turned pale. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my tone dripping with contempt. "For months," Nikki answered with a sharp smile. "How did you find out?" Justin stammered, feigning indifference. "It turns out I didn't have to dig very deep. Both of you acted like we were too broken, too defeated to fight back," Nikki said. Justin forced a hollow smile. "And did you fall in love?" "Desperately." Nikki's smile was cutting, almost cruel. "In love? Not even close. He's a complete fool, and I can't stand it anymore." Her smile grew more predatory. "But the intimacy?" She paused, a playful glint in her eyes. "It's incredible. Raw, driven by revenge. We've explored places you wouldn't even dare to imagine," she said, her gaze fixed coldly on BETH. "We've delved into realms of pleasure you haven't even considered, bound more by mutual disdain than desire." BETH's reaction was visceral, a mix of shock and pain as she turned to me. "This goes beyond betrayal. We were supposed to be partners," she said, her voice cracking. My laughter was bitter, devoid of humor. "Partners? You've spent your time waiting for the right moment with him, enjoying secret encounters while I played the role of the faithful, secluded husband. My office turned into a parade of bad news while you flaunted your affair, mocking our lives," I said. The room filled with accusations and revelations, private failures now laid bare for all to see, turning what had once been hidden into a public spectacle. No need for spies or secrets, everything was out in the open, irrevocably changing the game. I could feel anger boiling within me, hot and fast, but Nikki's reassuring squeeze on my leg calmed me. This time, Nikki was the one who kept her composure, taking control with a serenity I admired. "The divorce will be straightforward. It won't change the financial situation, but let's be honest, it's fair, and it will definitely make us feel a bit better. My new hobby will be making sure everyone sees these photos, accompanied by a detailed account of how you destroyed your marriages, betrayed your families, colleagues, and bosses. I might even track down your first-grade Sunday school teacher," she added, casting a look at Justin. "Oh, and I'm moving in with my sister for a while, taking Hammy with me," she said. I straightened up and delivered my next words like a fastball. What's really going to hurt is that you two have been siphoning funds from a construction company's materials account. It took us a long time to piece it together, but when Nikki and I saw how you were living lavishly, spending as if there were no tomorrow, we knew something was off. It turns out we've gathered more than enough evidence to prove it. You're looking at tax fraud, wire fraud, even mail fraud. So, even if Justin's cousin turns a blind eye, you're in serious trouble. I pointed directly at Justin and then at BETH. And you're not off the hook, BETH, a few years in prison for being an accomplice. BETH's eyes widened, panic written across her face. She stuttered, trying to defend herself. I didn't know. I thought it was his money, and I only put it in the account to keep it safe in case of a divorce. I didn't let her finish. Sure, you were just holding it for a friend. And mixing that money with our divorce? If my name had been on that account, I would have thought you were setting me up. Trust me, that would have ended very badly for you. The faces of BETH and Justin fell. It was time to lay all our cards on the table, the offer Nikki and I had prepared. Listen, Justin. You have one chance to make your life better. Take it. Resign from your job and disappear to the mountains, at least 250 miles away from here. Pack your car with just your clothes, your football trophies, and your yearbook. Nothing else, not a single extra item. Nikki will file for divorce, and she won't see a penny from that, thanks to your little arrangement with your cousin. We won't say a word to the police or your cousin about what's going on. But if your cousin stumbles upon this mess and decides to act, that's on you. I suggest returning any money you have to the company account. Trust me, whether he comes after you could depend on that. The room was suffocating with tension, as if everyone present had a lump in their throat. This was more than a crossroads for Justin, it was a lifeline, one last chance to dodge a bullet that was already on its way. I turned to BETH with a firm look. I'm filing for divorce. I get the kids. There will be no alimony for you, and your affair will be the reason for our separation. It's simple, accept it or face prison and lose the kids completely. As for our belongings, write up what you want, but keep it brief. You'll take your clothes and all those shoes. Nikki couldn't resist adding, he said you could take your stuff, but honestly, your shoes don't fit me, and I don't like your clothes. And since I've stopped wearing underwear with him, your grandma panties are all yours. I couldn't help but smile at Nikki's words, while BETH seemed to struggle to maintain her composure. Go find a job. Move back in with your parents or whoever. I don't care. You'll see the kids enough, but this deal only stands if both of you agree. Nikki leaned forward, her deep neckline drawing attention, perhaps one last jab at BETH. You two have really done something remarkable, she said. You've brought him and me together. We always said we had nothing in common, we couldn't even pick a movie without arguing. Now we share a mutual hatred, she added with a dry smile. It was a peculiar moment, charged with choices and consequences. Yet, beneath it all was an odd sense of closure, and perhaps, just maybe, a new beginning. Nikki's eyes locked onto Justin's with the intensity of a predator eyeing its next move. All we knew how to do was connect in the only way we could, through intimacy. It was our solace. If we ever sat down for dinner, it was only to recharge for another round, she said. Her gaze shifted to BETH. I can't understand why you would leave him for a fool, and don't think I'm joking. If you doubt it, why not join us next time? Maybe it'll raise the temperature even more, if that's even possible. I glanced at my watch, knowing it was time to bring this to an end. We need to stick to the deal. I'm sorry, but I have to pick up the kids, I said, standing up and offering my hand to Nikki. It was clear that something within her had changed after this confrontation with Justin and BETH. The wild rage seemed to have faded, leaving a different Nikki. Her fiery passion remained, but the unsettling spark of madness had vanished. BETH was quick to react, showing up at my door just after I had put the kids to bed. We need to talk, she insisted as she walked in. I settled into an armchair. This conversation had been necessary for a long time. "We can't let this man destroy us," she began determinedly. "Wait a minute," I interrupted, raising my hand. "The real problem in our marriage is right in front of me." Beth looked at me with an expression of contempt, something I had rarely seen in her. "You don't understand, Beth. Your fate could have been much worse. Nikki fought for you, defended you, trying to put all the blame on Justin. You have no idea what that cost her. She despises you, yet she still defended you. She thinks this whole mess is partly her fault. I'm not sure I agree, but a deal is a deal, because she asked me to." I continued, controlling the anger rising within me. If that money had been hidden in my name, or if the DNA of the twins told a different story, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Beth's face turned pale as she comprehended the reality of my words. The loneliness and isolation were palpable. "When do I have to go?" she finally asked, her voice soft. "Technically, by midnight tomorrow, for symmetry's sake, but you have a week. It'll take at least 2 days to pack all those shoes, and honestly, I can't wait to see them gone." Her response was a soft murmur that sounded like an apology as she went upstairs. It took her 5 days to clear out the house, leaving behind the echo of her presence in a home now filled only with the kids and me. Even with the twins' laughter, the place felt too quiet, too empty. There were rumors that Justin's cousin was on his trail, avoiding the police. I hoped Justin had found a good hiding place. His cousin wasn't someone you wanted to cross. And maybe, just maybe, I hadn't kept my mouth entirely shut about Justin's whereabouts. 2 weeks later, I decided it was fine for the twins to spend the weekend with Beth and her parents. They already knew, and Beth was well aware that one misstep could mean facing bars instead of the stars. Then, close to midnight, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I found Nikki standing there, dressed as if the night were just beginning, excitement palpable. "Is it done?" she asked. I nodded, gesturing toward her parents' house as I noticed a divorce document with "Chester" scrawled in red lipstick. "Thanks for mailing it," Nikki said, that wild smile spreading across her face. I thought it was time for a parting gift. "Let's stir things up," I said, a half-smile playing on my lips. I had promised not to involve Beth's parents, but Nikki had made no such promise. In fact, she had done the opposite. Soon, Beth's friends and family began receiving packages that would force her to give explanations for years. Nikki's smile widened. "I brought a housewarming gift," she said. I almost pointed out that I hadn't moved, but then realized she was right. The house felt different now, almost like a new beginning. "I think it's time for dessert," Nikki said. A familiar face appeared behind Nikki, Amber, looking shy and curious. She had decided to join us, innocent and unprepared for the whirlwind she was about to step into. We welcomed her into our chaos, more of a spark than a companion, but she didn't complain. Between Nikki and me, Amber experienced an intense initiation, her reactions showing she was an eager learner. Nikki wore that triumphant smile, like a cat that got the canary. The morning light filtered in as Nikki helped Amber to her car, her steps unsteady after the night before. Days passed, and Nikki began to show up from time to time, sometimes alone, sometimes with Hammy. When the house fell silent and the kids were asleep, Nikki would take my hand without a word, leading me to a place where words were unnecessary. Our movements were deliberate, a slow dance of rediscovery. Afterwards, as we lay together, her head on my shoulder and her fingers tracing patterns on my chest, the silence was heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. "We can't keep doing this," Nikki finally broke the silence, feeling her body tense at my words. It was as if we silently agreed. We had nothing in common, no emotional ties, and this silence between us was unsettling. Then, her soft, knowing laugh vibrated against my skin as she traced a heart over mine. "You must have been a slow learner as a child. Did they have to bring in a specialist to teach you how to walk, idiot?" she teased. The thing with BETH, I started, Nikki has decided her fate. Nikki, with her layers and madness, always perplexes me. It's hard to follow her logic sometimes. Maybe she thinks redemption is a rare commodity. Or perhaps she wanted BETH to witness the full extent of her loss. Make no mistake, BETH lost everything that mattered, and Nikki orchestrated it meticulously. Even so, I suspect that Nikki wouldn't find much satisfaction in seeing BETH behind bars. She couldn't savor the drama that way. Over time, Nikki might even dictate how BETH sees her daughters. This whole saga that started the day Nikki stood defiantly in the rain might have been designed by her, but honestly, I'm not sure. Asking her could yield a response as complex as her plans. Nikki has carved out a space in my heart that's hers alone. She may not have BETH's beauty, but that doesn't matter in the slightest. Nikki's love is fierce, total, and unyielding, the kind that doesn't let go until there's nothing left but dust. Amber has become a familiar face among us, thanks to Nikki. But she's not here to shake things up. For Nikki, Amber is a bonus, something special she wants to share with me. Nikki once described Amber as that slice of cheesecake you can't finish alone but are more than happy to share. It's Nikki's way of showing love, even if it's a bit unconventional. Yes, Nikki can be manipulative, a whirlwind of madness, perhaps even crossing the line into dangerous territory. But that's her, from beginning to end.